Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I am the host of GSD Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. Today, we've got incredible guests, and we're going to be talking about democratizing climate solutions and finance. So I've got Sébastien and Ilana. Sébastien was the lead author and international consultant. He contributed to the Nobel Prize. Yes, everybody, the Nobel Prize as the IPCC lead. He's got a PhD in physics, a Juris Doctor. I mean, he's got a lot of degrees. So we got some smart folks today. Ilana is a serial entrepreneur and investor. I mean, she's got a profound background. In fact, I got to say, I've never seen a 7-page CV come out of LinkedIn, but she has one of them. She's worked with groups all over the world. She's done work with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. In fact, she was an MIT Innovator Under 35, Marcus Pye's ambassador from Columbia, Draper University student in residence, etc. So I'd like to bring them on. I don't want to say any more because they got a lot to talk about today. So with that, I'd like to bring them on board. Hi, Sébastien. Lana, how are you?
Hi, Gary.
How are you, Gary? Thank you so much.
I'm fantastic. So let's go down through. So if you could introduce yourself, ladies first.
Yes, thank you so much, first of all, for this invitation. I feel very lucky to be here and with Dr. Sébastien Raoux as well. So I'm Ilana. I'm the co-founder, CEO, and lead product designer at ePioneers. And my background is a combination of finance. So I work at a private equity fund in New York, which is where I met Sébastien. Also a hedge fund. I was also a derivatives trader for the Asian market before launching an ed tech company called WorldTech, which trained thousands of people with IT skills with boot camps. And throughout that process for almost 5 years, I also became a software designer. And now I'm leading ePioneers, which is like my latest venture. So super happy to be here and super excited for this conversation as well.
Thank you very much. Sébastien, it's great to see you today.
Yes, thank you very much, Gary. Thank you for having us on the show. As you may hear, I was born in France. As you may hear from my accent, I was born near Bordeaux, where we have the best wine in the world.
Sébastien, I've been there, and you're 100% right. The wine,
yes.
I don't know what it is because of maybe preservatives or whatever, but when you get wine in Bordeaux, it's really good.
Yeah. I'm a little biased, but no, you're right. It's the ground. It's the earth itself. But anyway, I studied in Bordeaux at the university. I got my PhD in physics there, and then I moved to California in 1994 to do postdoctoral studies at the Berkeley National Lab. And when I arrived in California, I thought I would stay 2 or 3 years, but then I ended up spending 18 years of my life in the US. Including a decade working in Silicon Valley. I worked for a company called Applied Materials and high-tech manufacturing, where I helped develop technologies to reduce emissions of fluorinated greenhouse gases. And it's a bit esoteric, but I became an expert on this topic in the early 2000s. I was invited to work with the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, to develop the methodologies that are used by governments and companies to estimate emissions from the sector. And then so that was in the early 2000s, and in 2004 I asked myself if I wanted to be an engineer all my life, and could certainly have continued developing solutions to reduce climate impact of industrial processes, but I thought I could have a greater impact if I would also understand the policy and the legal and regulatory aspects of climate change. And so I decided to go back to school, and I got a lawyer degree, a Juris Doctor degree at the Santa Clara University in 2008. This was just before I moved to New York City, where I lived for 3 years, and And then in the meantime, I also started my own consulting firm and continued working in the electronic sector to develop the first carbon trading methodology under the CDM, the Clean Development Mechanism of the Kyoto Protocol. And then in 2013 came the first carbon market crash, where the price of carbon offsets from the Kyoto Protocol went from $20 to 20 cents in a matter of months. And so we had to reinvent ourselves a bit. And I started the business in Morocco back then to develop also climate-related projects in Africa. And now I live in Argentina. I live in Patagonia, near in the Andes, near the border with Chile. It's actually winter here. Yeah, it's a gorgeous place. One of those few remaining pristine areas of the world. And I continue doing some work, mostly focusing on advisory work for some startups, and I also do most of my work these days with the UN Green Climate Fund, the GCF, to develop climate mitigation and adaptation projects in developing countries. And then I continue to serve with the IPCC as a member of the editorial board of the IPCC emissions factor database.
Now that sounds great. So, what is the, if we look at it, what's happening right now? Let's talk about the status of the global climate crisis. Where are we today?
Well, we understand the climate change, the climate crisis. I think we can call it much better than we used to when the IPCC started back in 1990. The first assessment report of the IPCC was in 1990, and back then the IPCC had concluded that human-caused climate change would soon become evident, but the IPCC was not able to confirm that climate change was already happening back in 1990. But today, evidence is overwhelming that the climate has indeed changed and that human activities are the principal cause of it. And in fact, we've measured that the Earth has already warmed by 1.1 degrees Celsius since the Industrial Revolution. And the IPCC has concluded in its last assessment report, the sixth assessment report, which was released last year, and they're working on the summary now. It's expected to be released later this year. The IPCC has concluded human influence on the climate is unequivocal. That's pretty strong,
Sébastien. But people say it's not real. I got to tell you, I every single day when I talked about global warming, they say, but this happens all the time, right? The Earth heats up. My response back is that it happens, sure, but it doesn't happen in 100 years. It happens over centuries, right? So what's going on? I mean, these naysayers. I remember when Al Gore won the Nobel was in 2007 with the IPCC influence. I mean, where is it? I mean, people don't seem to realize where we are, and how does that really affect us?
Right. Well, that's how I was saying. The IPCC has concluded that climate change, the human influence on climate change is unequivocal. That means that there is no doubt that it is indeed our activities since the Industrial Revolution, principally burning fossil fuel, that is the cause of the increase in temperature that we have observed. Those are measurements. It's not speculations. Those are measurements. And the word unequivocal is pretty strong, right? But this is the consensus of the IPCC, and the IPCC is not an NGO. This is an intergovernmental organization. So basically, and it works by consensus. So basically, the wording, the conclusion that human influence on the climate is real is a consensus between the 195 countries that are part of the IPCC. So the debate is over. We have won it over climate skeptics. Unfortunately, we've lost 20, 30 years fighting, bad faith deniers, powerful lobbies. But now it's just watch the news. It's evident that our planet is warming almost everywhere. It's warming rapidly. It's warming even more rapidly than we had predicted. And the question is no longer about whether climate change is a reality, but whether we can slow the process quickly enough to mitigate its worst effects.
And so, can we turn it back? I mean, can it be turned back? What's going to happen? Because I heard that whatever we do today won't really impact us for 20 to 30 years out. So with the increased population on the planet estimated from 8.1 billion to 13, and a lot of people burning coal, especially with the current Ukraine war, I mean, there's a lot of things that have really, increased over the last and continually increased. How do we how do we reverse? Can we reverse it? Or how do we adapt as humanity? I mean, 80% of the fresh water is in Antarctica. What happens when this melts, which it is, right? I mean, so how do we mitigate it, and how do we help humanity live longer, right, and exist?
Right. Well, unfortunately, I don't think we can go back. Whatever we've put, all the greenhouse gases that we've put in the atmosphere, mostly in the last 20, 30 years, is there. So the effect is going to, there's a lag. The effect is going to continue happening. That doesn't mean that we cannot limit the effects of climate change, but we're not going to come back. And many of the consequences of climate change are irreversible. Losses in biodiversity, obviously loss of life due to climate-related disasters is not something that we can reverse. So it's difficult to be optimistic, but at the same time we cannot afford to be pessimistic. So I believe that we must be possibilistic in a sustainable manner. First, I think we need to truly integrate that we only have finite resources. We only have one planet, Earth. Thinking that we're going to go live on Mars is a pipe dream. Second, on the other extreme, we also have to reject the.
I agree with you. And the other thing is, what are the closest Earth-like planet is 150 light years away. First of all, you got to get the light speed, and secondly, you ain't going to live long enough to get there.
Yeah. Right. So this is not going to happen. I'll be dead before we all be dead before this eventually happen. But at the same time, we have to be realistic. And at the same time, we also have, I think, to reject the idea of the climate apocalypse. And even if climate change actually poses an existential threat to humanity, even though it's perhaps the biggest challenge that of our time, I think, as Professor David Correa argues, that apocalyptic rhetoric makes politics impossible. Mm-hmm. It leads to ignoring the suffering of people, the notion of climate justice, and it actually endangers democracy. But rejecting the idea of climate apocalypse is not to negate that we are actually facing a crisis. Being possibilistic means that we can address the climate crisis by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, achieving net zero, and adapting sustainably to our environment and to its limitations. So basically,
Sebastian, I just got to interrupt you for a second. I agree with what you're saying, right? There are 1.4 billion people in Africa in 54 countries. If you don't have food and you got to cook something, I mean, you don't have gas or you don't have something else, you use wood or you do whatever you got to do to eat, right? You cook the way you have to cook. I mean, we've got a lot of people in places around the world that are in the poverty level that don't have the opportunities that we have, right? And to be able to use, modern conveniences. So how do we address that? I mean, a lot of, if you look at it, we're at 26% of the pollution today is methane gas from cows, right? Going forward. And, so anyhow, the question is, okay, I get you, but how do we do it in the developing world where people don't have those opportunities?
Right. That's a very, very big problem. So it's the crux of the issue. I think we must infuse sustainability, the concept of sustainability, in everything we do. We need to have more inclusive development. We need to focus on human well-being and reducing inequalities. And to do this, we have to start internalizing the cost of climate impacts into our business models, into our products. We need to orient consumption towards low material growth, and internalizing those costs of climate impacts needs to be also reflected in our regulatory processes. We must put a price on carbon, be it through market-based mechanisms such as carbon trading, through redistributive carbon taxes, through command and control measures. But above all, we need to massively invest and innovate in low carbon technologies, in implementing climate adaptation solutions, keeping in mind that the biggest problems now are being faced by people in developing countries. That's why we cannot have just a Western developed country, rich country perspective on this. We have to develop solutions that will also work for the people that are most impacted, the most vulnerable people.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So let's talk about what is the net zero challenge and investment opportunities.
Well, the net zero challenge is we're trying to go to carbon neutrality, right? The net zero means that we cannot emit more than what we can remove from the environment in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. Obviously, it will be impossible to get to absolute zero emissions, but we have to compensate sources of emissions with sinks of emissions, right? By either we can plant trees, that's pretty well known, but we can also we need to start to think about removing carbon from the atmosphere and capturing it and store it and use it as well. So, but first
So what do you mean use it? So how can we use it? So we catch the carbon from the atmosphere. What do we use it for?
Well, we can. There are many startups actually in this field that are starting to look at using carbon to embed it into products. For example, you can make tiles that with carbon that's been captured for carbon tiles. Yes, floor tiles. You can pave roads. You can. Yes, there are some. Many startups that are looking at developing processes based on not just capturing the carbon but using it, not just storing it. We've been talking about carbon capture and storage, but it's also carbon capture, storage, and use. Right, we got to find processes where you can use that carbon. But I think first and foremost, we need to phase out fossil fuel support. This is outrageous. Between 2015 and 2019, the government from the G20 provided $3.3 trillion of direct support for coal, oil, gas, fossil fuel power. It's only, as you mentioned, it's only getting worse with the war in Ukraine. We see many governments are actually increasing subsidies as we speak.
Sebastian, I got you, right? But here's the deal, right? This is just, and I'm trying to figure out how to, I think about this a lot myself. We got a lot of homes in northern parts of the U.S., Midwest. You've got places, Poland, the Czech Republic, all over the world that rely on fuel. What happens when we don't use fossil fuels? I mean, even the fossil fuels, people think they have an electric car. It's great. We're saving things. But reality, there's a lot of fossil fuels involved, many times produce electricity. But how do we get to that point where we're able to heat a house in, Connecticut or New Hampshire in the middle of the winter, but we don't have any fossil fuels to do it? And you're right, it's going to have to happen, right? It's not if, it's when. But when do we get to that point? Because it's going to be critical soon.
Right. Well, if you look at the IEA, the International Energy Agency, their net zero scenario is the net zero scenario by 2050. Under that scenario, we need to transition from today's mix of renewable energy of about 20% to 80%. We're not going to completely suppress fossil fuel use. That there are some applications, including in particular industrial applications, where it's going to be very difficult to completely decarbonize. But we have to massively invest in this energy transition from 20% renewables to 80% renewable. The good news is that energy like solar and wind now start to be are cost competitive. There are in some cases where you have good solar or wind conditions. It's actually cheaper to produce energy from wind and solar than from coal. So we've passed the tipping point, but we are not investing enough. We're not investing fast enough. But for the most part, we already have the technological solutions that we know we need in the short and midterm by 2030, 2040 to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, to meet the goal of limiting temperature increases to below 2 degrees and hopefully to below to no more than 1.5 degrees C. So we do have the technologies. It's a matter of having a massive scale up. At the same time, we need to invest in more advanced technologies. No question. In particular, I'm thinking about storage, electricity storage. In particular, there are lots of promising things that need to be done, that can be done in high density batteries, new cell chemistries, phase change materials. Those are things that the venture capital community needs to look into. There are much more also low tech solutions, gravitational storage, pumped hydro, these kind of things that also exist and that need to be invested into. Artificial intelligence, especially as applied to energy and resource efficiency, and in particular in the context of circular economy, is also something that's very promising. So that's something that we need to scale up to address the climate crisis. Electric vehicles, obviously a very active field. It's actually according to the Boston Consulting Group, this currently represents 40% of the private sector investment in low carbon technologies. It's going to electric vehicles. We need, very significant investment in charging station, the industrial ecosystems that go around electric vehicle. This is happening again. These are technologies that we do have today. In the transport, perhaps the next frontier will be to decarbonize transportation will be for the shipping and the aviation industry, where I believe fuel cells and green hydrogen will become critical. Advanced biofuel production is another area where lots of venture capital needs to go to develop these solutions. And as you mentioned, agriculture, food production, land use, these are fields where we actually do not invest enough. We need to look into adaptation technologies, things like technologies that are related to food and water security. Lots of work in biotech sector for crop adaptation, these kind of things. So as I said, the technologies that we need to address the climate change,
Sebastian, can
at
I
least
ask
in the
you a
short term,
question?
is there. The question
Sebastian, I just want to interrupt you for a second. What happens if we don't do this? What's going to happen to us? Let's paint a picture. Let's say, we talk about it and the warning signs up. What's going to happen to us in another 50 years?
Well, currently, if we continue on the same trajectory, we can expect an average increase in temperature of 3.5 degrees Celsius, which is above two degrees. If we do not manage to maintain the increase in temperature below 2 degrees, we can expect some very serious consequences in terms of sea level rise, in terms of water security, food security, the massive losses in biodiversity. This is looking pretty bad. So I think we have to. It's not a question of whether we need to make these investments. It's a question of how fast we make them.
With that, I'd like to go to ePioneers, to Ilana. Let's talk about what you're doing at ePioneers in the market. The business model you have. Where are you?
Yeah, and thank you so much for that, both of you. I think in terms of my approach, so I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm very aware of the challenges and the situation. But if you see the evolution of technology, there are a few concepts I want to talk about. So there's this thinker. He's actually one of the students of Jay Forrester, who was a systems thinking professor who pioneered systems thinking in the world, really. And then came other academics like Donella Meadows, who also pushed for systems thinking. And I think from there, other very well-known people from academia who also did industry. And I mentioned this because it's very important to our philosophy and our vision and our mission. Benoit Mandelbrot, who invented, he kind of made evident, fractal patterns in nature, across multiple industries. And there's also Nassim Taleb, who is he's a mix of things. But I think the main point I want to make is that there's this concept of black swans and also innovation. And I think that I totally agree with most of what Dr. Sébastien is saying, but I think we do have a window of time. And giving you some context on how ePioneer started, Colombia has an amazing ecosystem. I'm from Colombia in terms of biodiversity, but we saw I saw personally bleaching of the corals in the Caribbean. And that's when I was like, wow, this is happening already in Latin America. No one is doing much about it. And you go to the Caribbean Sea, it's beautiful, the beaches, everyone's having an amazing time, but then you go under and all the corals are dying. And this not only has an impact in terms of economic tourism, but also people who live off the reefs, and also, people who live off the fish, which is a lot of people in the world. And so ePioneers is to climate finance. And enabling the funding of first nature-based solutions, but also other types of tech-based solutions for carbon reduction and removal. Right now, we're focusing on restoration and mostly projects and partners from the region in Latin America, but we're not limiting only to this. And our goal is to enable and unlock the market from a region that has not just an amazing potential in terms of infrastructure and biotech and innovation for its position and the natural resources that it has, which are unmatched in the world, but also bring brain power and also bring people who want to think creatively about how to enable more technologies and build that infrastructure. So right now we're focusing on that democratization of the portfolios, of the climate portfolios, is how we call them. And we're embedding climate action and climate funding into everyday spending with recent partnerships that we're deploying in the next month. But this is very general of the what. And I don't know if you want me to dive more into how we're doing it.
Well, let's go down through just, your business model. What about where are you today with the company?
Yes, so we started first with the creation of a new digital nomads visa in the country, like a year ago and a half ago. And our thought process was, okay, we need to open up the country and make people understand the nature of Colombia to then come to the country and enable decentralization of work. And so we started a year and a half ago, but we changed our model to a wider audience because we're targeting only travelers and digital nomads. Now to consumers and corporates investing in net zero.
What do you mean you're targeting digital nomads?
Yeah, so amidst the pandemic, we noticed that a lot of people working remotely were stuck in the country, didn't have access to basic, I guess like services like banking or health because they didn't have the visa to work in these countries, in Colombia in particular. And so we were like, okay, these are developers, these are designers, these are entrepreneurs, and they're having to leave the country every 6 months. Even if they're here and adding value and also, enjoying. And we were like, okay, let's create a new digital nomads visa for them to stay 2 years without having to leave the country. And so we took kind of the challenge and we made it happen. And so we basically created this visa from scratch. And this will, of course, have a billionaire impact for the economy. Colombia already creates $7 billion per year in tourism. But also it will save millions of dollars just in flights, for instance, to people who have to go and leave every 6 months because they didn't have before this type of visa. Now, ePioneers kind of like went beyond just digital nomads, which was the niche focus and travelers coming into the country. And we were like, okay, let's enable a crypto climate wallet that will help people not just invest and understand the potential of environmental credits or climate portfolios, but also have that traceability of these assets, where they're being generated, also understand the yield from them. It's more like asset management with crypto climate, models. And that's when we were like, okay, let's go to Brazil. There's open banking. Now I'm living here in Brazil. And Brazil has a digital payment system that is, over 100 million people already on PIX. Besides the potential the country has for solar credits, for agriculture, for carbon credits, biodiversity. So this is kind of where we're at today as a company. So
now, do you have any sales today?
Yeah, so we're launching a pilot with a company, a very big company. I cannot mention the name, but we start in October. We do have also other partners from the supply side that I can mention. So the Worldwide Fund, the Humboldt Institute, which leads all biotech in Colombia, also landowners in the country of Colombia and also here. And we're launching a climate card too, to embed climate spending into corporate budgets with Visa and another company. So
wow, that's great. Well, it sounds like you're making a lot of progress with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yes, definitely.
So let's see, we're a little bit over. We're about 5 minutes over. So closing thoughts and how do people get a hold of you? So Ilana, if you want to start out.
Yeah, well, closing thoughts. I think the challenge is massive and we need to think systemically. So something that we do today here in one part of the world has an impact. And we have the possibility to first be mindful about this, and also with the internet and all the access to information and technologies, educate ourselves about things we can do about other things happening around the world. So my invitation, it's more of an invitation to go to our website, learn about what we're doing. We are in the process of looking for investors too for our pre-seed round. And we're also
raising, Ilana. How much?
Sorry?
How much are you going to raise? What are you looking at?
Yeah, we're raising 1.5 million.
Okay, 1.5 million. Okay, US dollars, right?
Yeah, and this will help us launch with Visa and the corporate partner by October. Our goal is to close the seed by next year, but for this pre-seed, this is kind of the roadmap. And as you saw, we have a very strong technical team, also an amazing team of developers and tech creators. So we're combining different skill sets, different perspectives to bring the best solution. So yeah, this will be my invitation.
Okay, and where can they reach you? LinkedIn, Facebook?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Ilana Milkesand. My email is im@epioneer.io.
All right, super. And Sébastien, so closing thoughts and how do people get a hold of you?
Yes, thank you, Gary. I'm very excited as to what Ilana is doing in ePioneers, because I think this is part of what I call the democratization of climate solutions and finance. I think we're not going to solve this crisis without having everyone contributing to the solutions and without citizens putting political pressure on the system. And another key element is to enable people to own the climate solutions. And I think what ePioneers is doing in terms of allowing people to own carbon offset projects, to own biodiversity restoration projects, nature-based climate solutions through decentralized finance is a key part of the solution. So I'm very excited as what Ilana is doing, and I'm going to help support this. People can reach me on LinkedIn if and send me. You will find my coordinates there, my email, to send me a message if you would like. But thank you very much, Gary, for having us.
Thank you. I want to thank both of you for joining my show today. And to my audience out there, my name is Gary Fowler, and I'm the CEO, President, and co-founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios. Stay tuned for another exciting edition come up on Thursday. To both of you, thank you very much. Have a great day. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy. Tune in again. I'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.